I moved here December 2018. That decision came after a series of misfortunate events that happened to me in Brazil, that were really, really mind blowing. Like, right before I came here, I had a series of things happening that made me detach from Brazil in a way. First of all, in I was invited to participate on an exhibition in the National Museum of Rio, and it was an exhibition about the history of coral reefs from 1825, I think, to 2008. And that exhibition, I was the only contemporary artist to be invited to be featured. Most of the work was, you know, things from the museum itself. And that exhibition was absolutely gorgeous. Like, it was, for me, I've, up until that time, I've never had an approval of my work in the scientific degree, you know? So like, the scientific community that is studying the coral reef and wants to present a gigantic exhibition about its history asked me to portray bleaching and plastic pollution through my work. So for me, that was absolutely insane. It was just so empowerment. It was so powerful for me to be able to participate on it. But then it was obviously stated to be open for a year, and 3 months after, the whole museum caught fire. The whole museum. And we lost circa 200,000 historical objects of value, plus my whole installation that took me 3 years to make. And I never got compensated for that. Whatever I got was a pat on the back saying, we're sorry, there's nothing we can do. So that type of behavior in Brazil, that disregard and disrespect for history and for art and for culture, just devastated me. I was like a week catatonic. I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know how to move. I didn't know how to restart doing all of it again. And that was for me something that completely opened my mind to the idea that I couldn't continue to do my work in Brazil, because there is no respect for that kind of work, even more so environmental work, you know? Like, there are so many other problematics that Brazilians have to face that environmentalism is like in the back of their mind, you know? That's why the Amazon is being completely decimated. That's why indigenous people don't have respect at all. They're never heard. That is why we have so many extinct animals in the list. That's why dumping and pollution in Brazil is over the top, you know? Like, there's so many situations that just, I was like, well, what am I doing in a place where I can't seem to get validated, or I can't seem to have the opportunities or the openness of speech that what I'm talking about deserves, you know? That for me was mind-boggling. And right before that happened, the house that I grew up in and I lived in it for 26 years, because in Brazil it's a bit different from United States. Like, when you're 18, if you live in rural areas, yeah, you will leave your parents' house. But I lived in the biggest metropolis of the entire country, and the university was right there. It was 30 minutes from my house. So I kept on living with my parents for as long as I could, because one, they were awesome people and I loved living with them. Number two, we had a magnificent house with a backyard that was pristine. We had so many plants and so many fruiting trees, and you know, I had this wonderful experience with living with my parents. And why would I trade that to be, you know, having a difficult time wherever I was? So it just made sense for me to continue living with my parents all through university. And then that house that was the signifier of my existence with my family got demolished right before, on 2018 as well. We had to sell the house, like a bunch of things happened, as to every family. my parents, like my brother and my sister had moved out. I was about to move out. They were alone in the house for a long time. The house was big, they didn't need it. So they sold the house. We had to dismantle everything. So I went through my whole history of existence while dismantling that house. And that also clicked a lot of things for me in regards to who I am and what moves me in a way. And then after that happened, I got the notice that I was accepted in the Key West, the studios of Key West residencies for a month. And I started making preparations to do that. And after I started doing the preparations, that's when the museum burned down. And then after the museum burned down, I was like, well, there's nothing left from here. Even though it was in Rio, and at the time I was living in Sao Paulo, I always had this challenge in Sao Paulo where people thought of me as crazy coral girl, which sucks because how can you be taken seriously when you're the crazy coral girl? For my parents, they always came to the US. US is a place where they grew up, a place where they had beautiful experiences. And so for them, it was imperative that all of their kids spoke English fluently. That was like, I started having lessons when I was 6 years old. I started actually when I was 4, attending my brother and sister's class, and then I started having my own. So that's why my English is what it is. Like, I started really, really young. So my brain has, a bit of English, a bit of Portuguese, and it all mashes up together. And that's how I don't have a very pronounced accent, even though on some words, yeah, you can definitely see that I'm not from here. But yeah, that made a lot of sense to me nowadays, even more so, because yeah, I'm here. So they always knew that it would be important for us to speak a second language, and that language needed to be American English. So with that in mind, the idea of Miami came through. When my parents used to have more money until I was like 10 years old, or 8 to 10, we used to come to Miami twice a year. So I grew up in Miami. I have nostalgic memories and feelings about the city ingrained in my brain, in my breath, everything, like my grandmother used to own an apartment in Sunny Isles. So all of these experiences in a way moved me and imprinted in me this need or this want to experience the city when I was older. But 12 years ago, my sister moved here. And I mean, I was leaving my country. Where would I go? The first place in mind is here, because here I have my family. I have nostalgic connection. I have love. And most importantly, I have the reef. So Miami has an array of things that I need to exist. And so this city just gave me so much. In 3 years of living here, I've done more as an artist that I've done in 12 years living in Brazil.